Outputting our coverage. It's what we do.
That's all we do every Thursday
At 5:30.
College football.
Mountain West Conference.
Doesn't matter.
SEC
Is all that matters.
Nick Saban
Is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's all. Let's start the show.
Outputting our coverage. It's what Outputting our coverage show. We are here as always to discuss all the goings on in the week relating to college football. Plenty to talk about with Alabama getting into action again against Ole Miss this week. A lot of other SEC matchups. We'll certainly get to that. But before we do, bigger news, bigger future news, I guess you could call it. Mark Emmert, NCAA president and favorite punching bag of national writers and casual sport fans alike.
Really everybody everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much everybody. Announced today that the NCAA Division I will most likely be undergoing big changes. David.
Right. His quote is, I think the board anticipates a lot of change. Now, there's a board who gets together, about 100 Division I faculty athletic representatives get together twice a year in October and January, and they have meetings.
I imagine those meetings go a lot like this. They kind of all sit around a table and like, indeed. Right.
Oh, yeah. Lots of old-fashioned smoke pipes.
Smoking jackets.
Long mustaches.
Yeah. Scotch.
Yeah.
Things of that. Probably not a lot of actual work and discussion getting done, would be my guess.
So. People who pronounce encyclopedia.
Just throwing money up into the air, dancing around underneath it. Anyway.
I think we pretty much nailed it.
It's kind of how those meetings go.
But anyway, they said that they're going into their October meetings expecting to look a whole lot different in regards to their governance model for Division I athletics. What do you think about this? Good thing?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. When you see the disparity in punishments that's been doled out recently, you start with USC, which really got hammered over the Reggie Bush thing, and they're still pretty upset about that. You look at Oregon, who got a relatively light slap on the wrist since Chip Kelly had already left. Miami, that one's been pretty much bungled beyond recognition
from start to finish.
There's not really going to be any consequences. Then you take Penn State, where Mark Emmert just kind of unilaterally went, cowboy on them and just destroyed them. And then, of course, this week came out and those sanctions were pulled back in an unprecedented move to top the original unprecedented move.
Right.
They just, they look really stupid at this point, and they've lost all their credibility. They've got to do something like this.
Okay, well, here's my problem. With the NCAA, every time they change something, they still leave themselves open to criticism.
That is true.
Or they change it and make it worse.
That's very true.
So I'm kind of afraid of this change and afraid of them making what's already a terrible situation that much worse.
Well, I think what they're hinting at here is what we've known is coming for quite some time. I think you're going to see probably a further separation of Division I. Division I's gotten too big at this point. When you have some of the teams that are in the top division that you have right now, like the Florida Internationals and even like the South Alabamas,
right?
And teams like they don't.
And they keep adding. They keep adding every year.
Everybody wants to be in the top division. I understand that, but those teams have no business being in Division I.
UNA is going to be Division I.
Everyone is trying to do it because there's money involved, but basically the big schools are going to get their way. They're going to get one step ahead, and whatever Division I is, they're just going to create something else. It's kind of like those schools that got all excited because they're like, yeah, I'm getting into the Big East now. It's an automatic qualifying conference, and then the Big East exploded and became pretty much the same thing like Conference USA that they're already in.
Okay.
So
here are the two groups of people that I'm going to nominate for the name of the new division they're going to create.
Okay.
You have to pick one of them.
Okay.
The original committee that picked the Big Ten divisions.
Oh.
The legends and
That's a solid committee.
And the leaders.
Yeah.
Or the people who picked this new Big East committee name. Where it's the Catholic Seven, but they changed it to the American Division.
Oh, yeah. So the guys who came up with a great name and then second-guessed themselves and changed it to something stupid.
Right. So which one of those two groups are you letting pick the new name?
That's a good question. I'm instead, I think I'd rather go with a group that is just superb and excellent at every decision they make. I think I'm going to let Jay Jacobs, Auburn's athletic director, make that call.
He's going to wait around until the last second and then leave it open to a vote.
Yeah, and if he needs some assistance, we'll let Tim Jackson, the general manager, we'll let him assist.
Okay.
There.
Follow-up question. We're talking about this hypothetical elite division of Division One.
It's not going to be hypothetical for much longer.
Right. What would you name it? I have an idea, but I want to see what you're thinking.
I don't know. I'd probably name it... I think I would name it Big Boy Football, sponsored by GoDaddy.com.
That's a pretty good one.
That's probably what I'd go with.
Mine didn't take me very long. I think I would just call it SEC.
Well, that's true, too. Yeah, very true.
About, 14 teams in there.
Really, I think the appropriate name for it would just be money.
That's true. Can you imagine the contracts they get out of that league?
Yeah. I saw an article this week talking about the declining attendance overall for college football games, and I think you can make a pretty legitimate argument that is occurring because some of the games that these teams are playing. It's not a new thing, but you play these cream puffs. And
Texas San Antonio.
Right. It's getting more and more expensive every year to get tickets to the game, come down on campus, get a hotel to eat. Costs more and more money. Definitely. If the games aren't worth it, people are going to stop doing it. And that's what's happened.
Or I know there was a pretty packed house, but if LSU last week is playing the Citadel instead of Auburn in that torrential downpour, you're not packing out that stadium.
No. And
you have high-definition TV. People are just not going to go to games like that.
So really, I think you got to up the ante a little bit, separate out, make sure you're playing most of your games against top-tier competition. The expectations are going to have to change. Undefeated seasons will be almost impossible at that point. But, the NFL is like an undefeated season. The NFL is incredibly rare. It's going to turn into more of that type of situation. And I would rather see teams playing more great competition and maybe have some losses. I just think that'd be more interesting every week.
It would be more interesting every week. You're going to have some people from a player's perspective say you're looking at more injuries that way. But
maybe. But
I don't know. You can get freak injuries playing a powder puff too.
Yeah, but if you're going to combine some kind of playoff into this, and let's not kid ourselves, we all know that the 4-team playoff, it's only a matter of time before it expands. What you are going to have to do...
Makes me so angry.
You're going to have to cut back the number of regular season games anyway. That's the only way to make it work with the academic schedule.
Yeah, I just don't think you're going to get that because if you cut... Everybody sees cutting back games as losing money.
That's not necessarily true, though. If you can take some of the cream puff games, you're actually having to pay the opponent to come play you. And if you can convert that into a playoff game where you're getting a bigger payout, you could make more money.
I'm not talking about the universities. I'm talking about the TV stations.
Well,
and that's the big money contract right there.
Sure.
Less games, even if they're cream puffs, mean less money.
But, you could still maybe say that the TV stations might make more money off of additional playoff games than they would from getting a contract for a cream puff.
I can see reducing the regular season schedule and increasing the playoff schedule.
I think that's a plausible scenario.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Even if you do that, the players are still going to say, well, we're playing. If you're increasing the playoffs and reducing our cream puffs, you just increased our injury rate twofold.
Right.
But, I think that's probably what it's going to come down to.
We'll cross that bridge as we get there.
Yeah, we've said for a while that we're probably looking at 4 super conferences of 16 teams each. I still maintain that the Pangea of sorts of college football is coming. It's going to happen.
And it'll be called the Pangea Conference.
Yeah.
How awesome would that be?
It's exactly what it's going to be called. You end up with those 64 teams, basically, and it just makes too much sense. There's too much money riding on it for that not to happen.
The PCAA. I love it.
Yeah. That's what it's going to be. Other big news this week actually just came out today. David, did you ever play the EA Sports NCAA football game?
At an alarming rate a couple years ago.
I think pretty much every male, at least, who likes college football, and most males have played video games at some point, in our age bracket, have probably wasted at least a good year to year and a half of their life playing at least one of the many iterations of that game.
I'd say that's probably a good average, but you're going to find a lot of people who've wasted a whole lot more than that.
I mean,
on that game.
the games had gotten pretty awesome. I mean, the graphics were really good.
Recruiting.
I mean, it was very detailed.
You can go through and be a coach and work your way up. I mean,
it was really good stuff. And I'm not going to lie, during a lot of the years when Auburn was terrible, I would get a lot of satisfaction. Like after watching Auburn just play terrible on TV, I would go and play an Iron Bowl on the game and just make the difficulty settings as low as they could possibly go and just beat Alabama by like 400 points. And that would make me feel better.
And you know what you were thinking the whole time?
Yeah.
They should let me run Auburn because I obviously know what I'm doing.
Look how good I am at calling these plays.
Right.
Every call that I make, everything's working.
Yeah,
everything is working. But anyway, point being, future generations of kids may not be able to do that, David.
I don't think they're going to be able to. EA has been in legal battles for a long time now about using the likeness of players who've already graduated. And so the NCAA had already pulled their sponsorship for the upcoming games with these ongoing legal battles. And EA came out now after the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC said that they are also pulling their sponsorships from it. And so EA came out and said after the 14 game, that's it.
Yeah.
No more EA Sports.
They're not doing
NCAA college
That's
football.
kind of shocking to me. I figured there's too much money involved in that game for it to go away, but I guess the threat of the lawsuits must be even worse than that.
It's a lot of money. And they had a big settlement, or the judge threw out a plea deal for them. So.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Well, it'd be interesting to see if they can come up with a way to get around that, or if somebody else eventually tries to slide in with, maybe somebody else who has not been sued, another gaming company might figure out a different way to do it. But
I think maybe what you'll see is the Madden franchise who's done by the same people,
right,
could figure out a mini game part of theirs to do they don't label players or make them look like anybody or even teams, but maybe you can take, like the NCAA did, where you could take 4 or 5 high school games and play your way up. Maybe take a kid from some unnamed college, play him into the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, certainly they could try to come up with something customizable to where people can come up with it themselves. I think really at this point, the only way you could ever see getting back to something relatively realistic is if you kind of develop a blank slate, so to speak, and then you have a model where people, like individual people, can get add-on content or create add-on content, basically, and then the people could design all the uniforms for the teams, put in the rosters.
Now that would be interesting.
If it's so spread out, it's almost like Wikipedia.
Right.
It's the same concept. And in fact, if you did that, it would probably be a lot more accurate than what EA Sports puts out, because you're going to have the fans of each team creating all of it, and the rosters will be perfect and everything, but I don't know. That would be my prediction.
That would be interesting.
What'll happen?
I don't know that you could code something as open source as that so quickly, but that would be cool.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be something to watch out for. But end of an era. Certainly,
it's sad.
We'll think about it.
Madden sales are going to spike.
Absolutely. Yeah, people are still going to want to play football. So I don't know. Maybe this will help the NFL even more, because all these kids who really growing up down here in the South don't really think too much about the NFL, but if that's the only video game you can play, you might get more interested in the NFL.
And like the NFL needs any help getting any better.
It's crazy. It's just the rich getting richer, really. So we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we will recap the Auburn-LSU game. We'll probably recap Alabama-Colorado State, too. Some interesting takes there to talk about.
Definitely.
We'll do that here on the other side of Outputting Our Coverage. It's time for SEC preview.
SEC, Big 10, Big 12, 12 can't count. SEC, college football robber barons. SEC, yeah, they're big, they're fast, they're strong.
And Missouri and Texas A&M as well.
Yeah, SEC preview. Here we go.
All right, we are back here on Outputting Our Coverage. David, let's talk Auburn-LSU first. Game ended up with about the score differential that I think we both expected.
Right. It was pretty
two
close.
touchdowns, pretty much what we predicted. However, it arrived at that score not the way I kind of predicted the game was going to play out. Not at all. Really.
No, I did not think LSU would jump out that quick. And I thought, to be honest with you, if LSU was able to jump out quickly, that Auburn had no chance.
Yeah, I mean, judging by past experience last year, Auburn down 21-0 in 3 games. Texas A&M, Georgia, and Alabama just got destroyed in all 3 of those, completely fell apart. To their credit, didn't happen this time, but we can't just take away that 21-0 there in the elements and in the pretty intense rain.
Well,
first road game.
I mean, 14 of those points were turnovers.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
you
can't do that.
Punt.
I mean, if there's a list of things that you do to lose on the road, Auburn checked off pretty much everything on the list.
They did. Penalties.
Immediately. Penalties, turnovers.
3 and outs.
Bad special teams.
Poor tackling.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad.
Now, that was the first half. They really turned it around later in the game.
Yeah, they did. They turned it around. I was really impressed by the attitude. And, you don't want to talk about moral victories. That's hollow and, it doesn't really make you feel real great. But from an attitude perspective, it's a complete 180 from last year's team. I really feel like, based on watching that game, the Auburn players, they felt like they could win. They even when they were down 21-0, they were still playing to win. And the onside kick call, which is a little bit questionable to me, overturning that. If that had gone Auburn's way, things could have gotten really interesting. But
they could have. I think the biggest thing you saw was Auburn's run game. I don't think anybody thought they'd be able to run as well as they did against LSU.
Yeah, Trey Mason, man, he was a machine in that. He was fighting. He was fighting real hard. The offensive line for Auburn has certainly been a positive. Nick Marshall, still kind of frustrating to Auburn fans. Made some mistakes, made some good plays. Same thing with the receivers. I think it's definitely something to build on, though, and certainly, as an Auburn fan, you have to take that as a big positive that, they got in a bad spot, but they were able to keep fighting and keep playing, and they still kept themselves in that game.
I'm really conflicted looking at LSU right now, though, because I was impressed the way they started the game. I mean, their power running game is impressive.
Jeremy Hill, he is a tough guy to stop.
He is a very tough guy to stop. At the same time, I was not impressed with their... We talked that we thought their defense would be worse. Through the first couple games this year, they've looked pretty good.
Yeah.
But then against the run, I mean, they really couldn't do a whole lot against Auburn's running game in the second half.
And I think you give some credit to Auburn there, too. Auburn's running game is pretty good, but I think you can also maybe say that there's a possibility that the front seven of Mississippi State might be better than the front seven of LSU.
I completely agree. And when's the last time you could say that?
Yeah, that's kind of a strange thing to think about, but just kind of a larger theme this year in the SEC. It kind of, as a whole, it's made a 180. You think SEC, you think defense. Not really the case this year.
I think what you're seeing there is you have seen such defensively dominated teams, and everybody's trying to come in, and now I can't recruit these great defenders because they're all going to 2 or 3 schools. I've got to get good on the offensive side.
Right.
So for 5 or 6 years, all the focus has been recruit, develop, find offensive schemes and people who can play them, and now we're seeing the results of that.
Yeah,
I think in another 4 or 5 years you'll see it swing the other way.
I can see that, but you still have some teams like Alabama and LSU who have some superior defensive talent. Maybe they're just young. Maybe we're in a cycle with that, but.
And that's true because you do have a lot of quarterbacks and big play running backs in the SEC right now who have come back, whereas you saw a ton of talent defensively in the SEC go to the NFL last year.
So maybe we're just in a weird cycle there. Speaking of Alabama, Alabama struggled a little bit against Colorado State, not so much because of Colorado State, but more because of Alabama.
They did. They did not look good. I'm going to start this out with saying you were completely right. They did not look good, looked sluggish, looked like they weren't really into the game. The defense held up pretty well. A lot of people want to talk about how Colorado State could move the ball. They didn't cross the 50-yard line until deep in the third quarter. So I think that's a little overblown. But I really think I watched a lot of that game, and I think that it wasn't as much of Alabama struggling as it was when you're running the same 10 plays, you're not going to get a lot of production.
I can see
and
that.
Alabama got into 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, maybe 8 or 9 times. Every single time they threw 2-yard passes. So I really think they just weren't opening up the playbook.
David, I will say this, though. Something just seems off to me about this Alabama team.
I completely agree.
There's a different attitude than there's been the past couple of years, and I'm not sure if that's because maybe you're starting to see some of these players that Saban has recruited, some of these really highly rated guys, and when you have so many highly rated guys, they can't all play.
Yeah.
Maybe you start to have some issues with playing time. I think there's something going on there.
I don't know if it's as much the attitude as I think in the secondary they're actually shocked and maybe even a little scared because for the last 7 or 8 years you have not had a question about the talent in the back four of that secondary. Now you're looking on the corners and they look like they just do not have the talent to keep up right now.
Right.
And so, you haven't had to work with that for the last 6 years.
It's hard to just reload.
It is.
And you can recruit the greatest players, but there's no substitute for experience. And when you have great players in front of them who leave, logically, not everybody can get experience. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I think a popular thought for a lot of people is, Alabama looked terrible against Colorado State. Ole Miss coming to town, high-powered offense, upset
week off.
special.
Yeah, week
upset
off.
special.
Maybe
Yeah.
getting some injured players back. A lot of people that I've talked to are talking about the fact that Ole Miss has 2 receivers at 6'3", and that Alabama seemed to struggle with Mike Evans, who's 6'5". At the same time, I think Mike Evans is a pretty special receiver. Now the Ole Miss players are pretty good, but they're no Mike Evans. I mean, they're fast, but I don't think they can play that physical type of game.
Well, I will say that if Matt Millen happens to be calling this game, that he will mention to say Laquan Treadwell about 1,000 times.
He will
I
try
don't know
that.
who's actually going to do that.
Although Dante Moncrief, how great! I know we've talked about it before. What a great name!
That is a good one. Listen to these words by Ole Miss quarterback Bo Wallace.
So ready for this.
Quote, I think we have better receivers than A&M. They want to talk about Mike Evans being so good, but we have Dante Moncrief, and I think Laquan Treadwell is going to be that way. We have better players on the outside than A&M does. Yes, I think we can put points on them. I think we can put points on anybody. We just have to show up and play. It's the same thing every week. Let's stay on schedule, control the tempo, and don't have any turnovers.
Okay, I got to say the last paragraph sounds, if he had just said that, that's just normal quarterback speak before a game.
Right.
He really screwed up with the top paragraph.
Yeah, he's putting some pressure on his wide receivers there.
You want to know why your wide receivers are so good, Bo? It's because your running game is amazing. It's because you have a running back in the backfield who every time he touches the ball, he's a threat to go for a touchdown. And
right.
Bo can run a little bit on his own when pulling it down. However, if you want to look at Alabama's previous games, their struggle has not been in the pass or in the run game. They
Right.
can shut down a run, and if they make anybody one-dimensional, unless you just have some dominating players on the outside, you can't do it all with the pass. And that's not Ole Miss's game.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, I think it's kind of going to be a trendy pick for some people to pull Ole Miss over Alabama. If you look, I mean, it's the first real home game of consequence for Alabama. They had Colorado State last week. Nobody really cares too much about that.
Didn't look like the team cared.
I think that you got to factor that into it. It's one thing if this was in Oxford, although Oxford's certainly not a home field advantage really, but when you're playing in Tuscaloosa, I'm just not sure that this is a week to call the upset.
I don't think so either. And do you really put Alabama, who may have looked like they struggled against Colorado State, on the same plane as you do to a Texas, who has looked terrible all year and barely beat a bad Kansas State team last week?
Texas is in full tailspin mode, so that win over them doesn't
look
really
as
impressive as it normally would. Let's look at Ole Miss's schedule here on out. They got Alabama this week, then at Auburn next week. They travel to Texas A&M the week after that, and then to LSU.
Now, you know who might be stirred up a little bit about Bo Wallace's comments? It might be Texas A&M here in a couple weeks.
I have a feeling that, things could get rough for Ole Miss here over the next 4 weeks.
Definitely. I mean, they're in the top 25. They're feeling good. Big recruiting time for them. A lot of young guys who were with the program who said, yeah, this is what I came here for. I could see that locker room really turning if things get ugly.
Yeah. So what's your score prediction? Alabama, Ole Miss. What are you thinking? Close, at least? Not close?
I think it'll be close for a little while. I think Alabama can pull away. The defense for Ole Miss is good, but I think they're really overhyped. I mean, they gave up what was it, 30 points to Vandy in the first game.
You got a lot of freshmen on that
Got
defense.
a lot of freshmen on the defense.
Coming into Tuscaloosa the first time.
Alabama's offense has looked good this year, so I say Alabama scores somewhere in the 35-point range. I don't think they're going to go off for 50 like they did against A&M. They're better. Ole Miss's defense is better than A&M, but I'd say 35-17.
I still think it's going to be a relatively high-scoring game. I think you might see Alabama get up into the 40s, and you might even see Ole Miss get into maybe the high 20s or low 30s.
I don't know. I think without the running game, if Alabama can seriously shut down the running game, yeah, Ole Miss is going to complete passes on the outside, but when it gets to crunch time, I don't think they can punch it in from the red zone.
Yeah. Well, regardless, upset call, like I said, I don't think this is the week to go there.
No, I don't either.
It'll be interesting, if nothing else, to see if Alabama can improve some of the communication and chemistry problems that it looks from the outside looking in that they might have some things to work out. But, like we said, it's hard to reload. There's work you got to put into it, and it's not automatic.
Right.
So, let's talk about some other SEC games here this weekend.
Auburn's off.
Auburn is off this weekend, so of course they got Ole Miss next week. So Auburn fans probably kind of torn here. They would love for Ole Miss to beat Alabama, but also they wouldn't feel too bad about Alabama taking a lot out of Ole Miss. So
right.
Either way, think about it this way: as an Auburn fan, either way you're good.
You're going to win either way.
You're good either way.
Missouri, Arkansas State. That's going to be interesting.
Missouri quietly 3-0 right now. James Franklin, senior quarterback, has kind of returned to form somewhat.
Against Indiana and then two Division II teams.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. You're right. But this could be a pretty close matchup. Arkansas
I think so.
State and Missouri. Missouri still wins, I think, but I don't know, maybe within a touchdown or so, at least.
I could see that being close.
UAB, Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt, they didn't play that great against UMass last week. That was
like 21-7.
Yeah, making the trip up there, maybe a little starry-eyed being there in the Patriots Stadium, but I think they get down to business here at home against UAB.
They ought to take care of business there.
South Alabama playing Tennessee. Tennessee ought to be able to bounce back, even though Nate Peterman, great name.
Right.
He's out. He was their freshman quarterback.
Well, he got pulled anyway.
Yeah, he's gone. So pretty much their only option now going back to Justin Worley, see how he can do for him.
Oh, as long as Rajon Neal starts racking up the yards they expect him to on the ground.
Yeah, no problem with South Alabama. Of course, the rest of the season, a little bit different story. Florida and Kentucky, double bad news for Florida this week. Maybe not bad news for one, depending on how you look at it. Jeff Driscoll hurt last week.
I think
he's out for the season. Could be the spark they needed.
I think it's a good thing because you could tell the Florida staff was dedicated to Driscoll in his senior or junior or senior year. They were going to leave him in. No matter what happened, he was going to be the quarterback. Tyler Murphy came in and was 8 of 11 and looked good, was making some on-the-dime passes. I think he's your quarterback going forward. I think he was the better quarterback. For whatever reason, the coaching staff felt loyal to Driscoll.
Well, I will tell you this multiple times this year. I will certainly refer to him as Charlie Murphy, and please don't correct me. Let's just move on. Charlie Murphy, Florida quarterback, just sounds more fun.
Charlie Murphy.
Yeah. Kentucky, the game's at Kentucky and Lexington. They've improved a little bit, but
not enough.
Even if Florida doesn't have an offense, they can take care of Kentucky.
Yeah, I think they beat them up pretty good.
We'll maybe be watching that one. Another one of interest here, South Carolina and UCF. Normally not a game you'd really be too worried about, but South Carolina breaking our rule again for SEC teams, traveling to UCF to play in Orlando. UCF 3-0. Got this quarterback, Blake Bortles, another all-name team potential member. A guy kind of with a chip on his shoulder, wanted to get some offers from big-time schools, didn't come. He's played pretty well this year. South Carolina, coming off, they lost to Georgia, but they still have
had a week off.
They still have their hopes alive for the SEC East Championship. Need Georgia to help them out a little bit, probably, but any chance they get caught sleeping here by UCF?
Not after a week off. I think Spurrier's got him pretty focused going back to the state where he had so much success. Yeah. I'll actually make this prediction. Jadeveon Clowney has looked pretty average right now. I mean, he's been solid. I think he goes off this game.
Breakout game.
I think this is his game where people
fair.
start talking about him
I
again.
think that's fair. ESPN's really trumpeting this one, trying to play up the
upset card,
underdog angle. A lot of people are going to be watching because of that. I think you're right. I think Jadeveon Clowney makes some noise. I don't think South Carolina's in any trouble whatsoever. No. This one's interesting, though, to me. Texas A&M and Arkansas. Arkansas lost to Rutgers last week, which was a killer for me.
It was a killer for me. They were up 14. Yeah. Are you kidding me? I turn around and they lose.
I should have known. Brett Bielema, man, I'm an unbeliever.
No. Arkansas went and bandied. They went bandied themselves.
It's Bielema, man. He tried to Bielema his way into a victory, and believe it or not, it wasn't happening. Well, too many puns. Anyway,
we'll talk about this one.
Texas A&M with an atrocious defense.
Terrible.
Arkansas with a pretty atrocious everything. It's at Arkansas. Any chance?
By the way, Arkansas is 3-1.
Any chance Arkansas can win this one?
Yep.
Really?
Yes.
That's false.
Mostly because I picked it in the offseason. But
that is false.
I think there is a chance they win this one. A&M's defense is absolutely terrible, and their whole team is full of prima donnas. Now, if Arkansas goes up 17-0 early, now I'm just saying, I'm not saying their offense is doing this. I'm saying maybe fumbled, kickoff return, and then a run it in, long drives. You're talking about first quarter, 7 minutes to go in the first, and Arkansas's up 17-0. That team will destroy itself. A&M will destroy itself by bitter chatting, sideline to sideline. Johnny Football he'll get his numbers, he'll have a game. But he's got a little bit of an attitude himself.
No, I agree. I mean, that's true.
However, I do not think that that's very likely. But yes, it could happen.
I mean, the crazy thing to me is Texas A&M is only favored in this game by 3.5. There is no way. I'm going to go on record right now. I may look dumb, but there's no way Arkansas covers that spread. No possible way.
You know what? Just because of that, I'm changing my pick.
You're picking Arkansas.
I'm picking Arkansas now.
Right. We'll see.
It was not originally Arkansas. Andy can prove that. I'm picking Arkansas.
Yeah, I don't think this is a game Texas A&M.
And you know what? If I get within the 3.5 spread, you have to give me the win.
I can't do that. That's him.
We'll go on the show and
actually,
talk about
I could. I am the commissioner. I could do that, but I'm not going.
We're not going to do that. But on the show, I will take credit for the win next week.
Okay. The prime game this week: LSU. Georgia. I'm really excited about this game. I think it should be a spectacular contest. We're really going to find out where these two teams stand.
Right, and I think they play right into each other's weaknesses. LSU's run defense, I think, is pretty weak. I mean, average. Weak compared to the high expectations we have for LSU. Georgia can run the ball like madmen. I mean, they got two backs.
Gershel.
Yeah,
he's going to Gershel it all day.
They're going to Gershel it all day. But Aaron Murray's also pretty good. On the other side of the ball, Georgia is starting 5 true freshmen on defense, and LSU has got a power game that just loves to wear you down. I love this matchup.
And don't forget Zach Mettenberger either. I mean,
he has been very efficient.
If you let him stay in the pocket, now if you make him move his feet, all bets are off. But if he has a pocket to throw from, that guy's throwing some lasers.
Definitely. Now, Mettenberger has an interesting story this week. Did you see this that came out about his mom?
Yes. Kind of strange. Zach Mettenberger's mom is Mark Richt's personal assistant.
Right.
Through the football program. So she got the week off this week.
Which is nice.
Understandably. A little conflict of interest there. But got to be kind of awkward with the way Zach Mettenberger was dismissed from the Georgia football program, and his mom sticking around there as the executive assistant. Wow,
well, I mean, she probably knew that he didn't. I mean, he didn't do right.
No,
she's not going to defend the kid.
I understand that. It's just a little strange.
So this is they're basically just giving home field advantage to Georgia.
Right.
3.5 points.
Right.
What do you think?
I don't know. It's a really tough one to pick. Gut feel for me, like I said all year, I think this is one of those years where the SEC just kind of cannibalizes itself.
Oh, definitely.
Georgia at home, with the running attack that they have and what I saw that Auburn was able to do against LSU, I think I'm going to go with Georgia in this game. I think the scenario you kind of end up with is everybody's got a loss. At this point, I'm kind of seeing Georgia beating LSU. I got a pretty good feeling that LSU is going to give Alabama a pretty good game. You might see Alabama take a loss there. I think kind of what you end up with is all these teams with one loss.
And Oregon and Louisville undefeated.
Yeah,
that'd be terrible.
That's when things are going to get crazy. But I don't know. It really could go either way, but you got the home team, you got the rushing attack, that matchup there. That's my thought.
I'm going to take LSU, and this is why. In any game that I think LSU will be close in the score, I'm going to give it to them. Because for some reason, they always find a way to accidentally win those games.
The less factor.
It's the less factor.
It normally would be an X factor, but in this case, it's a less factor.
And it really is a less factor because it makes less and less sense every time you look at those games.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, close game, they're going to mess up and accidentally win this one.
Yeah, I can see that too. I mean, this may be, granted, some of the games on the Pick 10 every week are tough to pick just because you don't know anything about either of the teams. This is probably the first game where we know about the teams that it's been really, really tough for me to choose so far.
It is very tough.
I mean, I could really see this one going either way, but I don't know. We'll see. Home team, home advantage versus less factor is really what it comes down to.
It does. So both teams are talented.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. We're going to take a real quick break here. On the other side, we'll go through the Pick 10 standings, talk about some of the other games we have going there this week. So stick around. We'll be right back on Outputting Our Coverage.
We're back, don't know what we're talking about. 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 We're back, here we go. No more commercials. Here we go. Always talking stuff. We're back, don't know what we're talking about, but we're back. Time for the show.
All right,
we're back, here
back.
we go. No more commercials. Here we go.
Outputting Our Coverage. David, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that the way things have gone for you in the Pick'em so far. I know it's been tough. Do you want to talk about it?
I do want to talk about it
okay?
Because I want to feel like I'm connecting with our audience on a deeper level.
Yeah.
So I want to let them know.
You're connecting with them on a lower level.
Well,
really,
I want them to know who I am, and who I am is full of confidence and bravado at all times in every situation.
Who you are is you're full of doo-doo river craycraft.
I am full of doo-doo river craycraft constantly. But what I have done that most people don't really recognize right now is I have moved up one in the standings into a tie for 16th, which may not look like a whole lot, but it is the start of an inevitable climb to the top, which is starting last week.
Either that, or it could be your 2012 Auburn LSU game where you thought things were getting better before the bottom fell out.
Yeah, I'm going to forget about that game and say that it was the first thing that I said.
Okay, that's fine. I would just like to remind everyone that I'm still in a tie for second place. Currently, Moobs is in first place with a 31-9 record. We got a couple folks, Saban Peas Like a Girl.
That's what it is this week.
Boobs, myself, and Big Dog. We are in a four-way tie there in second place. Then we have Wooly right below there. Brugernaut, Knickerbocker, Hobnail Dog tied for 7th.
Antika took a little bit of a fall.
Antika took a little hit this week. She's in 10th. Grizzly McDaddy tied there with her as well. Rumple Fugly coming in at 12th, along with Ribeye and Hillbilly Man 52. Bama Fan 1 having a rougher year this year, although I think it may have resulted because
we put
a week of missed-picks.
That, and we put Notre Dame on the schedule every week, and he will always pick against Notre Dame.
Yeah, so that can be tough. And like you said yourself, Maryland Aub and McCourt J kind of tied there, bringing up the rear.
And then we have a couple people who are a little unfortunate in not having picked a week.
Yeah.
And Jack 9155, Max 2011, Jack's J7, and I Can't Hug Every Cat apparently has only picked 1 week.
Yeah, so it's going to be tough for them.
Congratulations there.
The slate of games this week, in my opinion, not quite as tough as what we had last week. It was pretty tough, and the week before that was pretty challenging as well. Quite a few SEC games on this that we already talked about. Of course, one of the games occurring tonight, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech. First of all, before we get too deep into this one, David, did you see the helmets that Virginia Tech will be wearing tonight?
I did, and they're hideous. I'm going to let you explain them.
I don't understand really the reasoning behind it. They look like stones of some sort.
Well,
rocks.
Yes, apparently it's the design that Virginia Tech has on all of their older buildings, and it was mined there in Virginia.
Okay,
and so apparently it's important.
So it'd be kind of like Auburn or Alabama wearing a brick helmet.
Well, I'm just waiting. I knew this year would be too soon, but I think in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see one of the coolest Auburn helmets ever in the old oaks on the side.
Well, that would be neat.
Now, that would be
That'd
cool.
be cool. I could support that.
Now, I'm not good with the leaves,
Yeah.
but like just some kind of back-shadowed oaks. That would be cool.
That'd be neat. It would certainly be 1,000 times better than the stone helmets of Virginia Tech, and just for that reason, I believe Georgia Tech will win tonight. Not really. I think Georgia Tech, very impressive so far. Granted, against not the greatest competition, but they did play North Carolina last week. Looked pretty impressive against them. Offensively, they've played very well. If you remember, North Carolina hung in there with South Carolina for a while, so they're a decently solid team. Virginia Tech,
they look bad.
Logan Thomas, he's bad. He does not fit. And let's not forget, if there's one person that's involved with Virginia Tech that will lose you every potential football game he can, his name is Scott Loeffler.
That is correct. He is not really
I will never,
money.
ever bet on a Scott Loeffler coach team again.
I've just got to say, the only way this becomes close is Virginia Tech's defense is really good. They have definitely kept Virginia Tech in some games they should not have been in, and Georgia Tech does run a predictable offense. I mean, they're going to run the triple option, and that's all they're going to run.
If there's one thing that Scott Loeffler, old lefty, knows how to do, it's mask a good defense. He can do that. He can definitely exploit your own weaknesses. He is great at that. That's his thing.
All right,
Anyway,
so
we should probably move on.
Off of the personal vendettas.
Oklahoma and Notre Dame, once again, it can be a tough pick here for Bama fan. Oklahoma started out the year with, what was the quarterback's name? The new kid.
It was not Blake Bell.
Tyler Knight, something along those lines. He was playing great. Got hurt. Blake Bell, the Belldozer, more of a running style guy, in for them now.
But you know what? He has made some throws that you would not expect this year.
He's played better, I think, through there than people expected. Notre Dame, to this point, been about the same as usual. I mean, they didn't really put away Michigan State. They...
struggle with Purdue.
Typical Notre Dame, pretty much. It's at home for Notre Dame, but I still don't see that happening. Oklahoma, I think
Oklahoma is
pissed
about last year.
Yeah.
They're going to come in with a vengeance.
Yeah.
I think they cover the 3.5 by a lot.
I think so. Wisconsin and Ohio State, really the first test for Ohio State. Wisconsin would be 4-0 if not for that terrible debacle at Arizona State with the referees. This may be the biggest test for Ohio State this year, unless Michigan can get their act together.
I think so, but I think Ohio State should have this game handily, but they're in a quarterback dilemma right now. Braxton Miller is healthy, but Guyton has looked really good.
Your position is he's the better quarterback.
My position is Ohio State's offense functions much better with Guyton in the game.
Right.
And I think he's the guy there, but Urban Meyer is already sold out to Braxton Miller. I think it's the same thing with Florida. I think they're going to get in trouble in like a Jeff Driscoll situation. So I think Ohio State struggles in this game, but eventually I think they win.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen enough out of Wisconsin, although at this point Wisconsin on pace to be the first team ever, I believe, with 3 1,000-yard rushers.
That's pretty impressive.
Which would be impressive. Ohio State probably a little bit more talented overall, though. You've got it at home. This is kind of their one big real test. It's one thing if you're playing games like this every week,
right? But they're going to geek up for this one.
Get amped up for it. I don't see Wisconsin pulling that one off. Let's move on. Colorado and Oregon State. If you are unaware, this is a Pac-12 game now. Colorado is in the Pac-12.
So weird.
If you forgot. Oregon State. They lost to Nicholls State, I believe, or North Dakota State, or somebody.
Eastern Washington.
Eastern Washington. Yeah, I knew it was one of those teams.
Yeah.
Starts with an N, Eastern Washington.
Right, that's it.
That was kind of a shock and a surprise to some people. Colorado trying to turn things around a little bit after some pretty terrible years the past couple of years, but at this point, the only teams they've beaten are Colorado State.
Central Arkansas.
Yes, they really haven't done much either. I'm thinking the overall talent level probably favors Oregon State in this one.
And they're favored by 10.5, but I'm going to take Colorado. In a game where you're probably going to have 400,000 yards, I'm just going to take the Buffaloes.
I'm going to go with Oregon State there.
Okay.
Then we got Virginia and Pitt.
Toss-up. I think they're both bad, but I'm going to take Virginia.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'll probably go with Pitt there, but I don't know.
They're favored by
see.
6.5. So,
Yeah.
And then you have an interesting one: Arizona undefeated at an undefeated Washington, who's already up to number 16 in the polls.
Yeah, we haven't really talked a whole lot about Rich Rod yet this year. He's kind of been quiet, hadn't really played anybody yet. Washington, of course, beat Boise State, which it's hard to say that's a quality win, but I guess it is. I'm just because of the unknowns. I'll probably go Washington there.
Yeah,
it's at home.
I'm going Washington. I think they're legitimate this year. Their coach is playing for his job right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with it.
All right, that's all the time we got. Don't take too much trust in our picks there. We'll be back regardless on the Outputting Our Coverage show next week. Thank you. Bye.
We're